Hi, Reality Riffing. This guest that I just interviewed, Maja D'Aoust, who is also known as the Witch of the Dawn, is a very eloquent, powerful, and I feel very practical practitioner of the witchcraft arts, and has a deep lineage behind her, and is really in many ways redefining what that looks like and what that is. I think even the term, which we discuss briefly, of being a witch or witchcraft, even now has a certain type of connotation, and her work is really to deconstruct that. And she is a major student and teacher. One of the things that struck me the most about her is that she really takes it seriously, being a student of the universe and a student of her lineage and her teacher, and goes through rigorous practice of training her mind and her body. And because of that, she's become a really deep wisdom keeper and oracle. And we talk about a lot of things, but one of the things that really struck me in our conversation is her understanding of the polarities on the planet and how to work with them in a way that empowers you and gives you sovereignty. So I hope you enjoy this incredible conversation with Maja, the Witch of the Dawn. Okay, so wonderful to finally get a chance to have you on the show. This is Maja D'Aoust. Did I say it right?
D'Aoust, pretty close.
D'Aoust. Okay, I'm close. We go to Paris a lot, and it's become a great joke. My French, my really lack of French accent. I have to actually play it. I have to play it the other side. Welcome so much to Reality Riffing, and just really excited to get a chance to talk to you about the ancient and modern practices that you're a real wisdom holder of, and would love to just start there. You're around your practices of I mean, I know that we use this word witch or witchcraft in lots of different ways, and I'd love to just hear your expression of that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Guru Jagat. It's a pleasure to meet you. I love your work as well. Just want to give you a little high five on that one.
Thank you.
Yes, witchcraft is having a huge resurgence right now, so it's a good thing to explore that word and find out what it means. There's so much stigma and taboo surrounding it, so it's definitely loaded.
It is.
For me, I'm way traditional with it in respect that the etymology of the word is wise one, or one who seeks knowledge. Not meaning like I'm wise. I just need to know things.
Yeah.
So most witches seek knowledge. They want wisdom, right? So it's very similar to Solomonic traditions. Not much different than most of the spiritual seekers that we find. I am driven to seek through nature, through divination, through meditation techniques. So those are like my big sources and go-tos that I use. For me, ever since I was little, nature was the biggie, man. Like, it doesn't take much for me to be surrounded by any kind of nature where I start to wonder.
Yeah.
So my wisdom seeking and knowledge seeking is because I have insatiable curiosity and wonder, where I'm like, how is this? What is this? What is going on? Right? So, which of course goes, I'm sure, into a lot of themes you've explored in reality riffing, which is like, what is going on here? What is the nature of this place? So for me, being a witch and practicing witchcraft is that I try to seek knowledge and wisdom for myself and others and explore.
It's a beautiful definition. And also I feel like we have to basically take back a lot of the lexicon that has been used against us in this age that we have come out of in terms of, I mean, I don't want to use the word patriarchy, but just because it's overused, but we call it the age of Pisces or whatever you want to call it. But I do feel like there's a real kind of sovereignty in taking back some of our language and also creating new language. So I appreciate your definition. It's very beautiful. And so where have been some of the natural portals that have brought you deeper into your practice? I'm so curious because I like to go around this planet and find these places.
Right? Yes, more portals, please.
Yeah.
We need as many entry points as possible, right? Yeah. For me, I'm very blessed in that I have met a lot of teachers and people that are portals, right? I find natural portals in nature, like I mentioned, where you just, I don't know about you, but there's certain locations you go to and you just get inundated with the energy, right? So I and other people would recognize these as like high energy places where it just kind of gets in you whether you want it or not, right? So thankfully, through exploring nature, I've come across some of those locations. Most of them are on mountains. Mountains have been my biggies. And even now, anytime I just went on Easter, went up to the mountain, because soon I find when I get up higher at a certain elevation, everything just opens like way better, right? So that going up into nature and specifically mountains were huge for me. And I did a few spiritual journeys on Mount Baldy specifically with some groups. The Ethereal Society in Los Angeles takes treks up there, and I went with them for their interdisciplinary religious parliament group, where tons of people from all different religions all went up together, and it was very powerful. Just the location of Mount Baldy specifically.
It's a major,
right?
Yeah.
There's so many. I'm sure you've been to quite a few too. Do you find that true with the mountains? Have you had any good mountain experiences?
Yeah, I mean, there's, I didn't know this. I got married at Findhorn in 2019. And my mom was there, and I grew up on kind of a very magical commune, but like around spiritual practice. And my mom told me that place was actually, which was very much a portal, was actually likened after Findhorn. And so, I'm always going on pilgrimage to find these natural openings. And so I definitely on many mountains, and we just came back from Egypt, so there's all those portals. So I'm always curious where, because I do think some portals are more active for some than others. And
yes, I feel, and certainly a lot of folks have said this as well. Alan Moore, who's a very famous comic guy, made a statement that he feels like it's our connection to the land through our blood and our kind of genetics, right? So, which makes sense, okay? If you have material in you that has come from people who inhabited a certain area of the earth, and you return to that spot on the earth, you're going to get like some vibration action happening, right? That's not in a racist or culturist way at all. It's just literally that your blood has a connection to that location on the planet Earth, right? Because we're basically like mobile pieces of Earth that have separated off from it and can scoot around, right? Where everything in us doesn't come from other places, like except maybe the stars, right? But everything kind of comes from there. But we're made up of, we eat the earth our whole life. Our parents come from the earth, like we're little balls of dirt that have origin sources. So I feel like when you wittingly or unwittingly return to a spot where some of your ancestors had stood, you get like a little shake up, right? It hits you in the spot, you know?
And I think also just kind of incarnationally, we belong to certain star seeds or certain tribes or certain civilizations that either have been on this planet or are off planet, and you get that hit too in different, or you also can get the opposite. Like when I don't spend a lot of time on Hawaii because I actually feel an aversion towards like
dude, I got that too in Hawaii. It was straight up like the Brady Bunch episode where it was like, get out. Which could be how it's become defensive towards colonization, or who knows. but there are places which are repellent for sure.
Absolutely.
I think for lots of people,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah. And we had that definitely in Egypt. There were some people who,
oh, really?
Who it wasn't a lot, but there were a couple. The people who did feel pushed out of the energy, they got a hardcore. They got their asses kicked.
Wow. Yeah. It's same with people. You know, some people you're like, and everything opens in you. Other people, you're like, and you gotta ski-doodle, right? Yeah. So energy is attractive, polarities are real, right? And you're gonna come up against them in all these different forms. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. So what does your divination practice originate, and how does that go for you?
Yeah, sure. My divination practice, I have really had connections where I feel like I saw what the root of all divination is. So my tools that I use are tarot, astrology, and the I Ching. But through my practice of divination, what I find is the actual modality is not very important. Once you understand what it is and how it works, everything is a divination tool, and the world becomes like an oracle, right? When you kind of like make that breakthrough into seeing what's happening. Basically, all divination is a story of archetypes that reveal through synchronicities and lineups in time and space a reflection of what is happening in reality at that moment. So divination is very time space oriented. Okay, so I know in a lot of the Kundalini yoga and other practices I've done with my teacher, who I'll talk about him in a minute, you can go outside of time and space, which is way more fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
And there you don't really need the divination so much because you get direct access to wisdom, right? But divination is very helpful on a few different levels. Number one, I find it can give people a direct experience of spirit, right? So if someone is having a block or unable to have breakthroughs or has never had an experience, divination is an easy, accessible way to have that just pop their reality, put it in their face that things are not what they think that they are, and that there are impossible coincidences that they need to pay attention to in order to draw their awareness to the fact that there's a much larger thing at work. So when I use divination in my practice with my clients, of course, they're going to have like a specific question, you know, which I love because, like I said, my whole deal is I am full of questions. I'm like, what is this? What's going on? What the heck is happening? Right? So I'm kind of like a question master, I would say, which isn't like an arrogant statement.
Yeah.
Because that's my all day, every day.
Yeah.
I'm like a detective in that department, right? And asking the correct question can get you a revelation, right?
Very true.
So these are in spiritual practices, we use these as koans, right? So a lot of teachers will give the student a question for them to answer, and then that's their revelatory journey that they go on. And certainly divination can provide this as well. So when certain people that are my clients will ask a question, it's so cool and magical because it will unfold into this, like, it dawns upon them something that they did not know before. So I really enjoy the process of divination for that reason. And it's so cool. You can see it happen before your eyeballs. You know what I mean? Like, it just, like, people are like, what? And their mind blows. Number one, because the information can be so specific and accurate, right? That it's like impossible. So they're like, what is going on here? And then number two, I think it's because they get revealed a truth, either about themselves or about reality or about the situation.
I'm very much I'm loving you, by the way, because you just have a excellent way of describing things that I think sometimes are not quite indescribable, but that need we need massaging around. I'm really into language and how and I think it really helps people to look at things in different perspectives, and it's part of why I do these interviews. But it is, I oftentimes talk about just, these divining arts, which I think are so powerful and also can become something that we're all giving our power away.
Correct.
They're both powerful, and they can become not empowering, just like anything, because it's a polarity planet. But I love the way you describe that it's how to do that. And maybe, I don't know if we'll have time, and if you're open to it, maybe you can do a little divining for me, real time divining. I hardly ever do it on the show, but I've done it one other time with a woman who is Nancy Reagan's psychic, actually.
Oh, fun.
And she did, it was pretty cool. So if you're open to it, maybe we can do a little.
I love it. Yes, to speak to that, because you raised an important point. Divination, like anything else, is open to abuse, right? So divination becomes a problem. I like it for data and information.
Yeah.
When people use it for decision making and rely on it in a codependent fashion, right? This becomes detrimental. So part of our sovereignty and autonomy comes from us being able to find resonance inside of our own hearts, follow our specific choices, things like this. So it's the same as like if you have a friend that's offering you advice, you're not going to like become a zombie follower of your friend. You're going to listen, take in what they say into your heart, contemplate it, right? Divination should be used ideally for contemplation rather than just following it blindly, right? Or getting obsessive compulsive and choosing to think that that's the source of where it's coming from, right? Then you get into illusion town, and it's not so good.
Yeah. It just continues what was already the issue, which is your non-reality.
Yes. Confusion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I'm wondering your opinion on, I feel like there is, like, the amount of respect you have towards these practices allows for a deeper kind of message or reverberation.
Yep. It's like a friend, like I said, and what I found in my practice was when I started addressing divination like it was a friend I was approaching.
Yeah.
The whole energy of it changes, right? Then if you are like afraid or desperate or, stuff like that, it's definitely responsive to energy is what I see. My clients notice it as well.
Yeah.
And when you have a relationship with it, right, this starts to form really an echo or mirror of your relationship with your guide. Ultimately, what divination is doing, if you're practicing it, should be to strengthen your link with your guide. So not everyone knows what I might mean by guide. I did write a book about it called Familiars in Witchcraft, and it's called all kinds of things. People will call it a guardian angel. In Indian yogic traditions, they have it as well. They have it in every single tradition and culture where there's an idea of like a higher source of wisdom that we can have an exchange or relationship with. For Socrates, this was his daemon.
Right.
There's so many famous scientists that have claimed to have it as well.
Yep.
Descartes, the founder of modern science, got the scientific method by having an argument with an evil demon inside of his own head. Okay, so the references to having a relationship to a kind of guidance system or guidance mechanism goes all over humanity. And really, when you get deep into divination, this is what you're doing, is you're making that relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And when you say guide, do you think that there's a primary guide, or you think there's a team of guides? Like, what's your experience?
In my experience, that's different for different people. I feel like, and what I've researched is everybody gets one like kind of higher guide that you're born with, and it sticks with you from womb to tomb. It doesn't ever jam. You come maybe in and out of clarity with it, right? But we each get like a kind of assigned one, which could even be part of ourselves, maybe our higher self or some aspect of our spirit. I don't know the answer to that one. But that would be the kind of guardian angel. Then other people have like other entities that could be like ancestors. I know I got my peeps, right? I got my peeps. Depending on your relationship with your deceased loved ones, sometimes they'll come forward, other times not always. Sometimes they're like off to the next thing, you know?
Yeah.
And then I find when people are pursuing certain things, it will attract other both positive and negative things that want to like either assist or feed off of whatever activity they're getting involved in, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this is a question and something I've now heard from two people that I actually trust quite a bit, and it's the first time that this particular idea has come into my consciousness. I understand, I understand it in a more earthly way, but in this kind of guide space, that their guides have been compromised by a dark force or by some sort of nefarious agenda. Have you heard anything like this before?
The way that I see it is all like nature. So I really have come to understand the reality of the axiom as above, so below. So it happens just like it would in nature. And rather than dark agenda, the way that I see it, and it was identified to me as parasites. Mm-hmm. So it's more like we think of things in terms of judgment, and we want to think like that's an evil thing or something.
Right.
When it's, to me, I felt it more like amorally, like in more of a nature vibe, and it was like a parasitic kind of energy, where it just sees that there's food there and it wants to eat it.
Right.
It's not like nefarious, but it's not what you want. Like you don't want to have parasites, right? So you have to do clearings and cleansings and all this kind of thing because they're just out there. Just like if you were a gazelle at a watering hole, there's going to be a lion, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of how I think about it and describe it. But what you're saying is they mentioned their own guides were being parasitized, not that they had guides that were parasites.
Yeah, that the guides themselves, like if, for example, when the person entered into a different level of, we'll call security clearance,
sure,
in terms of some of the kind of higher levels of what's kind of going on the planet, that the guide themselves was compromised.
And attacked, basically, right?
Yeah, or replaced with a double, or I mean, I know it sounds a little odd talking about it, but I've now heard it from two people who I actually think are quite like power. They're both doing powerful things on the planet, and also, so I don't know.
They're coming to feed off the power. They're coming to feed off the power, like a parasite, right?
Yeah,
so
it's similar.
My teacher, Dr. Calvin DeWolf, he's indigenous, Mi'kmaq, Native American. Okay, so he describes it too and talks about how like Carlos Castaneda talked about it. Different shamanic sources talk about this kind of experience. You'll never know unless you go to other places.
That's right.
So the other people who experience this all the time are psycho-naughts who do like psychedelic traveling and things like this. Astral traveling, like, so there's basically levels of consciousness, right? We can all kind of like agree to that, no matter what your beliefs in God are. And people can experience different places of consciousness. That's 100%, right? Human beings can get kind of the best description is overtaken by something that isn't them. Okay, so you can see this happening even to your friends and family. People deal with it with addiction. When you get an addiction issue, you're going to see the person do things that are not themselves.
Yep.
Right? So if this happens to humans, again, I always go with the nature thing, as above, so below. If these things happen in nature, then of course, this is just a mirror of other realms. So there's going to be predators there. There's going to be parasites there. There's going to be all of these same things happening that happen here. That's just what makes sense to me and what I've experienced, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a simple way of putting it. Because the truth of the matter is there are, especially if you're I mean, I think there's what people don't understand. This is my opinion. You can disagree or whatever you, but I do feel that most Westerners particularly do not have the training nor the psyche to be doing it. I think it's changing in the age of Aquarius, but to be doing this kind of psychonaut, like transversing some of these more psychedelic realms, or they don't have the nervous system or the wherewithal or the shamanic training. So then we get, over on the east side of LA every Saturday night, 100,000 people on ayahuasca. And what's happening is that they don't know how to come back into this realm without a lot of parasites and a lot of other possessions and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So part of my practice that I do with my teacher, Dr. Calvin DeWolf, he teaches will and discipline training, okay, for mind, body, and spirit. So the things we do are really hard.
Yeah.
Most people quit. They cannot do it because it's so difficult.
That's what I like about you.
Right? It's really gnarly, okay? And we do things like part of his practice is on the winter solstice, we stay up for 5 days while fasting and doing the concentration and meditative techniques. As you know, anybody that's done Kundalini yoga, it's hard to do. Yeah. You have to push through boundaries, and what it does, Kundalini yoga does the same thing, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you hit that limit of your will where you want to quit, listen, if you're fighting something and you want to quit, it's gonna win. If you have not developed your will and discipline to a strong enough level, you got no business going into those places, right? Just like you wouldn't walk downtown in an alley late at night, or you're just inviting trouble that you aren't going to be able to deal with, right? So I 100% agree with everything you're saying. I think so many kind of pop spiritual people are completely irresponsible in their leadership to people in that direction, because without training, we see people being parasitized. We see people having psychological events. They develop like a mental schism or a mental break. As a result of doing these travels, they become completely ungrounded. They aren't taught any grounding or clearing techniques, which is one of the bases of witchcraft practices, right? Any witch, if you're doing proper witchcraft techniques, you have learned how to do clearings, grounding, and banishing. I do not see those teachings being taught in a lot of places, okay? People are trying maybe to avoid dealing with negative energy or those kind of things, or pretending if it's not there, it's not their problem, all these kind of things. Whereas I know other spiritual disciplines, the one I'm interested in, the ones that I know you practice, they deal with those directly, give you preparation, right? Preparation and training in order that when you come up against something, whether it's a parasite, an entity, or death itself, that your mind, body, and spirit is prepared to not like have a freak attack when you come up against it. Right? Very important for everybody to know.
So important. And it's certainly, I just watched, me and my husband just watched all 7 Harry Potter back to back, which I've never done before.
Oh, wow.
Which was, I mean, not in the same day, but like over the past week. And I mean, I think just this whole idea of understanding the dark arts, which really, Don Juan, I think, has the most accurate in terms of something that anybody could access without having a teacher and a true lineage. You could read the I think particularly it starts in that 3rd book of Carlos Castaneda, where Don Juan is describing what actually happens in the world and in these kind of heightened consciousness states. And so it's the dark arts, but it's not because it's not because it's dark. It's just because we live on this polarity planet.
Because it's there.
Because it's there.
If you go to a watering hole as a gazelle, there's going to be lions there too. That's reality.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have blinders to reality, because it will not work in your favor.
Yeah. Yeah. And so many, I mean, I don't really particularly myself, I respect it, but I don't love the term shadow work because I think it's overused, and a lot, and just kind of, it's a broad stroke kind of new age thing. But, I think a lot of times the reason why that's even necessary or it's become something that people is because there's not a sober, just daily understanding of that it accumulates into something where now I have to manage this kind of dark shadow stuff that's coming up because I was kind of in denial of it for so long in some way. I don't know.
And witches, and what's happened to witches is a perfect example of some of those dangers, because when people don't do their shadow work or their dark arts, you are in denial. And so what happens when you're in denial of darkness is you become a harbor for it because you can't see it in yourself, okay? When you harbor it, you then refuse to own it, and you're going to project it onto someone else. So this is the story of the scapegoat, which is like, I hate that story. It's an old story. I'm hoping that that story will come to pass, that we can move on to the next story, for crying out loud, because I'm so tired of people being unaware of darkness and projecting it onto and blaming an individual for it.
Yes.
Please don't do this. No more scapegoating, please.
It's especially in the era of social media, there's even a more cowardly, in my opinion, is just a massive kind of cowardly culture of scapegoating and just this outrage culture that is that's really violent and
it's destructive. It's a hugely destructive force that causes real destruction in people's lives, both for the perpetrators and the victims of it. So if you please disengage from scapegoating energy. There's ways that we can achieve justice that do not involve that story. We need a new story there, please.
And since we're on this subject, which I love this subject because it's relevant, I think in a lot of ways, and especially because now so many of us are living even more in a digital space than we ever have. In this kind of cancel culture, what have you experienced? Is it your opinion that this kind of transference of darkness is, where does that come from, and how can we mitigate it in our practices?
It's a way oldie, right? So this isn't coming from, this is in Bible stories. It's in pagan stories. This goes way, way back. So like, the origins of scapegoating goes like as far back as humanity. It's literally a primitive form of justice, okay?
Right.
Is essentially what we're looking at. And it's one that we have to evolve out of in order for us to get into this next step. Like, this is one of the barriers that we have to accomplish growth through. So for me, and what I've gotten from my guides, is that this time predominantly, aside from even what we're dealing with the virus, is that humanity is at a point where we have to make evolutions occur, okay? Yeah. In order for evolution to occur, there has to be a dropping off or a shedding of old ways of being, of old ways of thinking, of these kind of antiquated things that are no longer serving humanity. And we need to, it's not like they're, like I said, bad or evil. We just don't need it anymore. So the stories of the scapegoat, you can look in Cain and Abel, right? So the classic story in the Bible of the two brothers where one gets a blessing, the other one doesn't. So one gets envious, right? So we have envy coming through, which of course is all over online. All you do is see all day people that got stuff that you don't got, right? So this is the torture of humanity, is that it is not fair.
Yeah.
Not fair at all. We see people succeed who are evil, who have hurt people, who maybe are our own abusers. We see them go on to get credit, validated, loved by society, while we suffer or, die in some cases. So this is a big problem, right? The problem is this evil and darkness isn't always unjustified or made up in people's heads, okay? So there's a lot of real victims who suffer real problems from people, and then see those people not get justice. So our primal need in nature is to make things even. Mm-hmm. What nature is a homeostasis. If things get off balance, what nature does is try to get even. Okay?
Right.
This is what nature does, is get even. So when you feel that need inside of you to get even, that's your nature trying to express itself. Okay. It doesn't have to do with you. It's not a personal thing. You aren't the first person who's had this issue. I promise, right? This is as old gets. When I started doing my practices with Dr. Kelvin DeWolf, part of his techniques is that you go right into that place of your primal nature. Mm-hmm. This is true in Kundalini yoga as well. I know there's a lot of practices where you go right into that ancient snake.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You go in and you look that snake right in its eyeballs.
Yep.
So that it doesn't take you by surprise. And you're like, what is this that's happening to me? And you try to get even subconsciously or do actions of violence. Okay. So when we come into knowing that there lives inside of human beings this need for getting even, a need for justice, a need for things to kind of come through in that fashion, we gain awareness of the fact that it's not personal. And so that hopefully our person isn't taken by it, and we can raise up the notch to figure out a better way to deal with it than resorting to these kind of primitive solutions that are only coming from that dragon hidden deep down inside us.
Beautifully put.
Right?
What do you think about, as I'm seeing a lot of this right now, which is that one of the dying gasps of this age that we've come from, and the controlling elites that are, you know, as we're in the midst of some version of you know, a crisis that he may or may not have to do with some of the agendas of that kind of dying elite that's losing power.
Yep.
I've just seen a lot of mind control that's happening in both AI and the digital space, where it's like a new way to possess people, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess it's not that new, but I'm seeing a whole nother level of
propaganda.
And also people not, and intelligent people who are even who think that, you know, who have an idea of some sort of expansion or spiritual practice, or that you know, somehow everything that they read online or on social media has become doctrine. And I'm just curious both what you think we can do to combat that, and just to talk about it, because I think it's really, really relevant right now.
Yes, please. Yes, please. So, number one, most of the techniques that I know you do also, and that are involved in witchcraft, and certainly what I learned from Dr. DeWolf, focus on discernment and the ability to come into listening to your own mind, right? And being able to take in data. So this is a question of influence, right? And this is how disease works too.
Yeah.
Things overtake you, and parasites as well. Okay. So as a system, we walk around, we're vulnerable to all kinds of things penetrating us, right? Is our situation. We go out, we get penetrated by solar rays, we get people in our face, we have all of these things in our environment that come into us.
Yeah.
Okay. We as human beings, what you're doing is you're this little thing going around, taking in and sorting through all this data. Number one, to see what's true and what's real. Okay, so this really, to me, what you're talking about is our loss of ability to know and see truth.
Yeah. Yes.
And feel it. Okay,
yes.
So Kelvin teaches truth is something you feel. And when something feels weird or off, you're like, oh, I don't think that's, no. So you have to sort through, is that your opinion of the thing and your bias, right? Making you be like, no, I don't like that, right? Or are you really feeling the truth? This is a big problem. This is a huge problem, okay? What we as human beings need to engage in right now are ways that break our bias and opinions in order that we can access and discern what real truth is, and have a process within us where we can mull it down.
Right.
In yoga, these techniques involve clearing your mind, right? And then you get the hit, and then you can feel. A lot of people are having problems with their ability to feel things in general. We've become kind of like overstimulated and numbed, whether it's through, you know, whatever source you want to call it. People's ability to naturally just have feelings has kind of like had issues, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to be able to discern an influence and see, I tell you, I look at things and I'm like, it's so transparent. I see right through it. It's like, are you kidding me? And then I see other people saying stuff and I'm like, wow, we have a huge problem. These people are so obviously influenced because they're falling for it hook, line, and sinker, right?
It's scary.
They're falling for it.
I mean, I'm not scared, but it is, you're just, I mean, I'm, you know, and you're watching people. My experience recently with everything that's happened is this is accelerated. That
oh yeah,
that this kind of artificial intelligence and lack
yes.
of
influence.
Yeah.
Yep. So please, everybody, try to find a way that assists you to know the difference between poop and shinola, right? Like old school people always used to be able to tell the difference between, like, you know, it's that old saying, like, you're peeing on my leg and telling me it's raining. Like, this
Right.
is something that I feel like we have gotten distance from the ability to discern. Like, I love people, like, there's figures that became famous for their ability for this, like Judge Judy or Dr. You know, back in the day, there was individuals that people really respected just for their ability to be like, that's garbage, man. And then, you know, but it's hard because so much of our bias will act like glasses that we see through that is going to influence whether or not we can see and discern the truth. So we need more ways for people to gain access to truth that can filter through all of those things that you're talking about. Very important.
It's really feels like one of the most imperative things. I mean, of course, there's always going to be, but on planet Earth, I think it's different in other places, but that there are the people that are not, you know, awake, and that's just part of the thing. But certainly the kind of what feels like the co-opting of certain buzzwords and a certain kind of outrage terms and basically playing on people's
manipulation.
Yes. And because everyone's on social media now 20 hours a day, I mean, the chances for mind control are just, it's exponentiated.
Yep. And they can know that if you read a certain thing, you're going to have an emotional reaction to that thing, right? Yeah. So they're just little stinkers. They're little stinkers that are trying to goad you into having like a little like a reaction. I'm so funny, like through doing especially Kelvin's techniques, I'll go to a movie theater. Like I remember I went to go see Avengers Endgame. I couldn't even, I can't watch movies anymore because I have too much disillusionment, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny when you find truth, you see everything that's fake, man, and it's kind of a party pooper. But so I was in the theater and all I could feel was all the humans around me being emotionally manipulated by the feeling of grief. I could see that it was so trippy. Like I had an experience where I saw the puppet strings trying to pull their grief emotion, and then they were like pulling on it, right? Yep. So when you come clear of being manipulated, you see it when it's happening, right? So it's not mysterious. People think they're really pulling a fast one, but anytime I feel it, it's in my guts. My intestines literally make a rumbling noise when someone is attempting to emotionally manipulate me, and I'm like, wow. It's upsetting, but getting upset about it isn't going to be helpful. The most important thing is you just need to know that someone's peeing on your leg and telling you it's raining.
Yeah.
Pretty simple, right?
It is. I mean, ultimately it is. And I think it takes a whole nother level of mind training in these pressurized technological age, and also understanding of how, because the AI it's pulling thoughts that you don't even know you're having. They have this technology and they're using it to sell things back to you and to basically create certain emotions and opinions and belief systems. And So just to understand that that's happening right now, I think is the first step. And then of course you need the training. You need some sort of training of the mind and the body. Yeah.
And you don't need to be paranoid about it either. Here's the other thing I want to state. And even with the parasites and other things, like that then makes people scared, and they're like freaked out and they don't know what to do. When you see something for what it is, there's no threat that it's going to get in you and mess you up, right? Yep. So the main thing like that we're talking about now is the reason the awareness of this is important is because it's not threatening when you can see through it.
That's right. It's that's another level of the being at the center of whatever we call truth or kind of sovereignty, is that it's not scary. I don't know if you follow these things, but David Icke's most recent interview got banned, not shadow banned, but banned publicly from YouTube and everywhere else, Vimeo and that kind of thing. And one of the last things he said in the interview was, "I'm not afraid. After all of what I just told you, I am not afraid, but they are afraid of us." And you know, in his worldview, that you know, I'm not afraid, but the controlling power elite that are afraid of people understanding what is actually going on and how they're being directed and nuanced.
And ironically, they state the reason he's to be feared is because they think he's going to influence people, while they are 100% using all of those things that they're scapegoating. Yeah. He's a classic example of a scapegoat.
He is.
Classic, when those individuals who have banned him are doing everything they say he's guilty of.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
He is a
classic what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yes. And in fact, I don't think it's completely across the board, but just, you know, to broad stroke it, most people who have that kind of polarity or outrage against them, you know they have to be. This is Yogi Bhajan 101, which is that if you're not drawing that kind of polarity, then what are you doing? You know, that means you're doing something. If you're not, if there isn't that kind of the angry horde, which of course then we go back to witchcraft. You know,
I get so much polarity, man. I've gotten death threats. I'll get random comments. You know, it's nonstop. And these people that I always get those from, I've never listened to a single word I said. Never looked at any of my material. Right? Never. It's a knee-jerk reaction to the word that has nothing to do with the reality of it.
Exactly. Yeah. I was at this place was a complete portal, which was St. Magnus Cathedral on Orkney Island. Wow. In northern Scotland, and the most witches that were burned in the Scotland witch trials were burned in that church. And I grew up in an area that was very in Maryland that also had some pretty hardcore witch trials, and I remember growing up and being really creeped out by some of the stuff that was still kind of present, the energies and otherwise. But man, that there was kind of a huge healing that happened for me there, because I really both felt like the intense kind of sacrifice of these women who are women, you know, people who, like us, practicing these awakening arts. And it was just really, it was pretty deep. It was the most kind of historical moment I've had in terms of the lineage of what it would be, you know, was being called witchcraft, and which is what both of us, you know, we would definitely be burning right now if it was those times. But yeah, I just really felt like how deep that went into the epigenetics. So and
it was stored in the land there.
Oh, major. And in the church. And it wasn't even sad. It just felt like a whole new uprising of that same consciousness, which is being certainly held by wisdom keepers like you. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I just love, I could talk to you for so long. I really love your perspective and everything. And I want to at some point. We have to talk about the I Ching because
yes,
you're the first.
It's a big deal. Yeah,
it's a big deal, and I think that it is. You're the first person I've talked to in a long time who's using it actively, and I feel like it's such a major portal.
It's like having a guru at your fingertips that you could, like I said, my passion is for answers, and I Ching is so clear and concise and unbiased in its opinion. Although sometimes it razzes you a little bit.
Totally, it's definitely a poke, provoke, and elevate. But
oh yeah.
Just the geomancy. I mean, I think like that alone. I would love for you to. Do you teach a course on I Ching?
I have one that I'm wanting to develop now because I put the book out, and I want to. I've taught quite a few people I Ching, and it's so cool because then I hear feedback from them on how much it helped them, and just being able to have access. Because sometimes you have problems. You can't get anyone to understand you. You'll even of course, I promote people to please go see professionals, like whatever it takes, man. Use all the tools in the toolbox.
Yeah.
I'm not someone to poo-poo anything. If it has efficacy, use it, please.
Yeah.
But people find themselves in positions. I mean, for me as a witch, most of my peeps have tried everything and they're out of options, right? Yep. So, and for me too, like when I get to those places where I am not satisfied, I'm like, I am not satisfied with this answer. Right? This is not hitting that truth mark, that it's not doing the bong, right? Yep. I'm like, I'm not going to stop until I get that resonant click, right? And so I have received more of those from I Ching, right, than probably any other source, rather than the direct practice, right, which was like as you just go like, but with I Ching, it has so consistently given me those click-ins that it's I cannot overstate its value to my spirit. So I love sharing it with people.
Yeah, it's I think many people more than ever are talking about light language and light grids or obviously the term hieroglyphic, or even some of the glyphs that the languages, the sacred sound languages come from, those kind of glyphs. And then also I think my experience with off-planetary like glyphic languages and stuff, but the I Ching is, I mean, this is a geomantic light language that I think that because of maybe some of the cloak in traditionalism that it's had, I think maybe it hasn't been expressed in some of the ways. So I'm just so happy to hear that you're.
Do you want to do a divination with the
I
I
do.
Ching?
We could do I Ching or anything, because I Ching's a little more complicated. I'm happy to just pull a card or whatever's close to you. We can do whatever.
Right? We can. Well, if we want to pull a card, I have my deck here. Let me grab it.
Okay.
What's the question? We have to do our question.
We need a question.
Right? Yes.
How about let's make a question something to do with Rama University, because it's my big North Star that I'm working on right now. So something like what do I I don't want to make it too broad, but something like
specific is good.
Specific's good. Okay, so something like what am I missing?
Something's needed. Then, right? So you have like a specific need for it, for advancement of it, right?
Yeah.
What is needed for the advancement
of the Rama University project?
That's a great question.
Okay,
let's see. The response that we get is the Hierophant. Ooh. I don't know if you guys can see this picture.
That's a great card.
It's the Pope, right? But the deeper meaning, if you guys can see, so he has the fish head on the top there.
Yeah.
Which is from the Pope wears this hat, which is actually taken, the fish people, like Oannes, were the mystics. Okay, so they were like a mystic teacher. And the Pope, the real popes, were meant to be the key holders, right? That have the teachings. secrets and have the secrets. So this is like a professor is what this card is, right? So in order for it to go through, do you have like your professor team instated, or are you guys looking for people?
We haven't gotten quite there.
This is what you need. You need the teachers.
All right.
Right? And they're going to be the ones that are going to give it like that extra thing. It's so funny because when I'm making things or helping people try to get their thing, I Ching too, we'll talk about this too. It always talks about the team. It's like the fellowship of the ring. Yeah. So you're at the part where you have to make your fellowship, your team.
Yes.
Right?
I'm getting good chills. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
when you get that team, that carries power, right? So it just gave me goosebumps too. When you get your peeps, then it like gives it that extra boost. So if you are at the point where you need to kind of find and solicit who your professors are going to be at the university, that's going to help push it through to the next level.
All right.
Yeah, good one.
Very good. Thank you so much. I really, really love just hanging out with you, and thank you for everything that you're doing. How do people get in touch with you? And I want to get, when this is all over, I would love to host you to teach something amazing at Rama Institute. So I hope we can do that.
Thank you. I've had so much fun. You're so awesome. Yeah.
I'm
on the interwebs at witchofthedawn.com. Because of that dawning, right? It's when something dawns upon you that you didn't think about before, that epiphany or the revelation. I know a lot of folks that are kind of part of the way showers, yourself included, have gotten in meditation that this is like a new dawning, right?
Yeah.
So it's that word just really stuck with me a lot, that aurora, or our kind of like new light entering. Coming into these times. So Witch of the Dawn is also my Instagram and all that stuff, and I'm pretty easy to locate.
Yeah. I remember when I found you, and that was your handle, or your what you go by, whatever you want to call it, your brand, which sounds, it's kind of ridiculous. It's much deeper than that, but I really resonated. Like I instantaneously really resonated with that. So I very much.
It's what's going on, man. It's time. We're at the fresh start of a new beginning, and I'm so excited. And I know a lot of people are struggling with the dying throes of it, the death throes, which is what's going on right now. So I would just really, encourage everyone to remain adaptable, look at what the changes are producing and how it's making new connections, because that's really the direction that we're going.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Guru Jagat.
Thanks for being on the show. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Reality Riffing. These are conversations that I think are important with people who are doing great things in the world about subject matters that need to be discussed. If you enjoyed the content, the conversation, please feel free to share with your people, share with your friends and family, rate the podcast below, and also subscribe.